It was a quiet Friday evening, the kind where the sky starts to melt into a soft orange, and the air smells faintly like rain that never came. I had just finished folding the last load of laundry when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from my daughter, Emily. "Mom, how about dinner tonight?" "Our treat. 6:30 at Maple Grove." My heart did a small leap. Dinner with the family. That didn't happen often anymore. Everyone was always busy. The kids with school, Emily and her husband with work, and me just here in this small house, trying not to get in the way of their world. I looked around the house, smiled to myself, and thought, maybe they just want to spend time with me tonight. I changed my dress. Nothing fancy, just a soft blue one I'd had for years. I brushed my hair back, put on some perfume, and looked at myself in the mirror. "You still look okay," I said quietly, smiling at my reflection. I didn't know why I suddenly felt so nervous. The restaurant, Maple Grove, was warm and dimly lit. The kind of place you go when you want to make a memory. When I walked in, I saw them right away. Emily, her husband Mark, and my grandson Liam, who waved as soon as he saw me. That smile, it made everything worth it. "Mom, you look great," Emily said, standing up to hug me. Her perfume was stronger than I remembered. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said softly. "It's so nice to see you all together." Mark smiled politely, like he always did, and nodded toward the waiter. "We already ordered some drinks, but we waited for you to order food." It felt nice. It felt right. We talked, or at least I tried. I asked about Liam's school, about their new house, about the garden Emily had started last spring. She nodded here and there, but something about her eyes told me she wasn't really there. You know when someone's smiling, but their eyes aren't? That kind of look. The waiter came by and I ordered a small salad and tea. I didn't have much appetite lately, but I wanted to seem cheerful. Halfway through the meal, Emily put her fork down and looked at me with that "we need to talk" face. I froze for a moment, not knowing what was coming. But my heart started to thump like it always does when bad news is near. "Mom," she started gently, her tone rehearsed, too calm to be natural. "We wanted to talk to you about something important." I smiled faintly. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Mark leaned forward, his elbows on the table, and cleared his throat. "We've been looking over finances, and things are getting tighter with Liam's tuition and the mortgage. We've been thinking about the monthly help we've been giving you." And there it was. Emily jumped in quickly, as if trying to soften the blow. "It's not that we don't want to help, Mom. You know we love you. But we think it's time for you to start being a little more independent." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Independent?" I repeated softly. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, looking down at her napkin. We just can't keep sending you money every month. It's been hard for us too. You still have your pension, and we thought maybe you could manage from now on." For a few seconds, I couldn't find my voice. The sound of clinking plates and quiet laughter from other tables filled the silence between us. "I understand," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "Of course. You have your own family now." Mark nodded quickly. "It's not about that. It's just practical, you know? We can't keep spreading ourselves too thin." Liam looked confused, glancing between us. "Grandma, are you okay?" he asked innocently. I smiled at him, hiding the crack forming in my chest. "I'm okay, sweetheart." Inside, though, I wasn't. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it meant. That quiet, invisible message that I was becoming a burden, that I wasn't part of their world anymore, just a responsibility they were finally ready to set down. The rest of dinner blurred. I don't remember much after that moment. They talked about vacations, plans, work, things that didn't include me. I nodded and smiled where I could, but my heart was somewhere else, folding itself smaller and smaller so it wouldn't take up space at that table. When the check came, Mark grabbed it quickly. "We said it's our treat," he said, forcing a polite grin. "At least for tonight. At least for tonight." Those words echoed in my head as I looked out the window at the streetlights flickering to life. I thought about all the nights I used to cook for Emily when she was a little girl. How I'd save the last piece of pie just for her. How I'd skip dinner myself so she could have more. I thought about all the years I worked double shifts to make sure she had new clothes for school. And now I was too dependent. When we stepped outside, the air was colder than before. I pulled my shawl tighter around me, pretending it was just the wind making my eyes water. Emily hugged me lightly. A quick, half-hearted kind of hug. "We love you, Mom. You know that, right?" "I know," I said softly. "Drive safe." As their car disappeared down the road, I stood under the restaurant's neon sign for a long while. The rain finally started. Slow, steady, gentle. I let it fall on my face. I walked home that night instead of calling a cab. It wasn't far, maybe a mile, but it felt like walking through all the years that led me here. Every step I remembered something. The bedtime stories, the Christmas mornings, the scraped knees, the hugs, the "I love you, Mom," that used to sound so real. By the time I got home, my clothes were soaked, but I didn't care. The house felt colder than usual. I turned on the light and saw the quiet living room, the empty couch, the untouched photos on the wall. I sat down, still dripping, and whispered to no one. "It's okay. I'll figure it out." But the truth is, I didn't know how. I didn't just lose their support that night. I lost a part of my connection to them. I lost the feeling that I still mattered. And yet, even then, part of me wanted to protect them, to believe they were doing what they thought was right, because that's what mothers do. We find ways to forgive even the moments that break us. That night, before going to bed, I went through my little metal box, the one where I keep important papers. I counted what I had left. My savings weren't much. My pension covered just enough for groceries and bills, but not much else. Still, I told myself, "You'll manage. You always have." And as I lay down, I stared at the ceiling and thought, maybe this is what getting old really means. Watching the people you love move on, and learning to love them quietly, from a distance. But even then, I didn't know that this dinner would be the start of something much deeper. Something that would change the way I saw my family forever. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. It was still quiet, the kind of quiet that sits heavy on your chest. The birds hadn't started yet, and the air felt cold against my skin as I sat up in bed. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emily's face across that dinner table, her lips moving softly, saying words I didn't want to hear. I made myself a cup of coffee, black, the way I've always liked it. No sugar, no cream. I ran out last week and hadn't bought more yet. The kitchen smelled faintly of toast and thyme, that old, comforting scent that sometimes makes you feel less alone. I sat by the window watching the sky turn from gray to pale pink, and I thought about how strange life can be. How one dinner can change the way you see everything. There was a time when Emily used to call me every day. When she moved out for college, she'd phone every night to tell me about her classes, her new friends, or a funny story from the cafeteria. I'd sit on the couch holding the phone with both hands, smiling at her laughter on the other end. That laughter used to fill my whole house. But life changes. Calls turned into texts. Texts turned into once-a-week check-ins. Then those became once a month. And sometimes not even that. I always told myself she was busy. She had a family, a career, a life. And I didn't want to be one of those mothers who guilt-tripped their children for not calling enough. So I let her go. I let her grow. I thought that was love. Giving her space to live her life. But maybe somewhere along the way, I disappeared from it. After breakfast, I went through the bills piled on the counter. Electricity, water, insurance. All the same usual suspects. I started doing the math like I always do, trying to stretch the numbers just enough to make them fit. I could manage, I told myself again, even though I knew it would mean cutting corners. Less meat, fewer lights on, maybe skipping my prescriptions every now and then. I could manage. I always had. Around noon, I got a call. My heart jumped when I saw Emily's name flash on the screen. For a moment, I thought maybe she was calling to check on me. Maybe she regretted how dinner went. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my voice soft, hopeful. "Hi, Mom," she said quickly, that rushed tone that always meant she was multitasking. "Just checking. Did you get home okay last night?" "I did. Thank you for dinner," I said. "It was nice." There was a pause. "Good, I'm glad. Listen, we've got a busy week ahead, so I might not call much, but I'll stop by soon, okay?" "Of course," I said. "Take care, honey." And that was that. I stared at the phone long after the call ended. The silence afterward felt louder than her words. Later that day, I went to the small community center down the street. I started volunteering there a few months ago, helping with sorting donations, sometimes reading to kids when the daycare staff needed a break. It's not much, but it gives me a reason to leave the house, a reason to get dressed, to smile, to feel needed again. When I walked in, Mary, one of the ladies I work with, greeted me with her usual warm grin. "There she is, the best storyteller in the room," she said. I laughed. "Oh, don't flatter me, Mary. I just talk too much." "Well, the kids love it," she said. "And we love having you here." That meant something. More than she probably realized. We spent the afternoon sorting through boxes of clothes and canned goods. The hum of chatter and the clinking of metal shelves filled the air. There was a peace to it, a kind of rhythm in helping others when you can't seem to help yourself. When I came home that evening, I checked my mailbox and found a letter from the bank. My stomach sank before I even opened it. It was a reminder about a missed payment, one of those small ones I'd been putting off. I sat at the kitchen table holding the letter in both hands. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly scared, not of being alone, but of what came next, of what happened when you started slipping between the cracks of your own life. That night, I couldn't eat. I made tea and sat by the window again, the same one where I start every morning. The neighborhood lights flickered across the street, and somewhere, faintly, I could hear music playing from someone's backyard. Laughter followed. That easy kind of laughter that families share when they're together. I wondered if Emily's family was laughing somewhere too. Maybe they were having another dinner, another movie night. Maybe she was tucking Liam into bed, kissing his forehead and telling him stories. Stories I used to tell her. I smiled at the thought. It hurt, but it was a beautiful kind of hurt. The kind that reminds you you've loved deeply, even if that love doesn't come back the way it used to. A few days later, Emily dropped by unannounced. She had a few boxes in her hands. "Mom," she said, stepping in. "I brought over some of Liam's old clothes. Thought you might want to donate them at your center." I smiled, though I noticed she didn't stay long. She set the boxes down, looked around and said, "You should really think about downsizing. This house is too big for you alone." I nodded slowly. "Maybe, but it's home." She sighed. "I know. I just worry about you." She didn't say it out loud, but I could feel the rest of her sentence. "You're getting old, Mom." When she left, I stood in the doorway watching her drive away. For a moment, I almost called out to her. I wanted to tell her to come back, to just sit with me for a while, have a cup of tea, talk like we used to. But the words stayed inside. I didn't want to make her feel guilty. That night, I went through those boxes. Tiny shirts, small jeans, little shoes. Each piece brought back memories of when Emily was a child. I remembered washing her clothes by hand, hanging them on the line in our old backyard, the sun shining bright over our small world. It's funny how things come full circle. The child who once needed everything from you grows up and suddenly, you're the one who shouldn't need anything at all. But that's life, isn't it? One long circle, a dance between giving and letting go. Still, sometimes when the nights are too quiet, I find myself whispering to the walls. I just wish she'd stayed for tea. A week went by after Emily's visit. The days started blending together. The same quiet mornings, the same long afternoons, and the same evenings where the TV played more for company than for entertainment. I kept myself busy, though. I always do. It's the only way to stop my mind from drifting too far back. I started taking longer walks around the neighborhood. There's a park a few blocks away with old oak trees that line the path, and every time I walk through, I can still hear echoes of when I used to push Emily on the swings there. Back then she'd yell, "Higher, Mom, higher!" and I'd laugh, pretending I was strong enough to push her all the way to the clouds. Now, those swings creak in the wind, and sometimes I sit on a bench nearby, just watching other families, parents chasing toddlers, grandparents feeding ducks, all those tiny ordinary moments that used to fill my life. Sometimes I wonder if the people in the park ever realize how fast those moments slip away. One afternoon, I saw an older man sitting on a bench near mine. He was feeding birds with bits of bread from a paper bag. He looked over at me and smiled. "They only like the soft pieces," he said. I smiled back. "Don't we all?" He chuckled. "You live around here?" "Just a few blocks down," I said. He nodded. "Same here. I'm George." And just like that, we started talking. It wasn't anything deep, just small things at first. The weather, the park, the way kids these days never look up from their phones. But over time, our paths started crossing more often. Some days we'd walk together for a while, talking about the old days. He lost his wife a few years back, and I told him about losing my husband too. It's funny how grief recognizes itself. It doesn't need introductions. Those small talks became something I looked forward to, a reason to get dressed, to wear lipstick again, to feel like maybe someone still saw me. One chilly morning, I came home from the park and checked my voicemail. There was a message from the power company, a reminder about the payment that was overdue. I sat at the kitchen table running numbers in my notebook again. My savings were getting smaller every month. I could manage for now, but it was getting tighter. I didn't want to ask Emily for help. Not after that dinner. Not after what she said about not being able to support me anymore. Still, the thought of letting the lights go out made my chest tighten. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. I thought about all the years I'd worked. The long hours at the diner, the double shifts. The times I skipped buying things for myself so Emily could have what she wanted. And now, here I was, counting change and wondering how to stretch another week. I wasn't angry at her. I was hurt, yes, but mostly I just felt forgotten, like I'd done my part in everyone's story, and now I was written out of it. The next morning, I went back to the community center. They were short-staffed that day, and I helped out in the kitchen. We were making soup for the lunch program. Nothing fancy, just big pots of vegetable stew and bread on the side. I rolled up my sleeves, started chopping carrots, and for a while it felt good. It felt useful. Around lunchtime, one of the younger volunteers, a girl named Sarah, sat beside me. "You remind me of my grandma," she said. "Is that so?" I asked, smiling. "Yeah," she said. "She lives in Ohio. I don't get to see her much, but she sends me letters every month." "Letters?" I asked, a little surprised. "People still write those?" She laughed. "She does. She says it's her way of staying close." After she left, I couldn't stop thinking about that. Letters. That used to be my thing, too. I used to write Emily little notes, stick them in her lunchbox when she was little. Notes that said things like, "I love you more than sunshine," or "Be kind today." It always comes back around. Maybe that was something I could do again. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with an old box of stationery I hadn't touched in years. The paper was yellowed around the edges, but it still smelled faintly of lavender. I picked up a pen and started writing. Dear Emily, I hope you and the family are doing well. I made that chicken soup you used to love. It didn't taste quite the same without you here, though. I paused, staring at the page. My eyes burned, but I kept going. I just wanted to say thank you for all the years we shared, the good and the hard ones. I know you're busy, and I don't want to make things harder for you. I just hope you know I still love you, no matter how far apart life takes us. Love always. Mommy folded the letter neatly and slipped it into an envelope. I didn't even write her address on it that night. I just left it sitting on the table beside the lamp. The next morning I mailed it. Days passed, then a week. No reply. But somehow, I felt lighter. Like I'd done something my heart needed to do, even if it didn't change anything. A few evenings later, I was sitting on my porch when George stopped by. You look tired, he said. Just a long week, I replied. He sat beside me, holding out a paper bag. Brought you something, he said. Inside was a small pie, apple, still warm. Figured you could use something sweet, he added with a grin. I smiled. Thank you, George. You didn't have to. I know, he said. That's why I did. We sat there quietly for a while, listening to the crickets. I realized that sometimes kindness doesn't come from where you expect it. Sometimes it comes from strangers who slowly become something more. Before he left, he said something that stuck with me. You know, the hardest part about getting old isn't the aches or the slow mornings. It's when people stop seeing you, like you're part of the furniture, instead of the story. He was right. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at myself for a long time. The lines around my eyes, the silver in my hair. They told stories of laughter, pain, and love. I thought about how I used to hide them, color my hair, wear makeup every day. But now, I just saw life in them. Still deep down, I missed being seen. The weeks after that dinner were some of the longest of my life. The silence from my family was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I kept hoping one of them would call. Maybe Sarah, maybe Ethan, maybe even one of the grandkids who had always called me Grandma Cookie. But no one did. The phone stayed quiet. The house stayed cold. And I stayed alone. I tried to fill my days with little things. Cleaning, knitting, reading. But when you've spent years having Sunday dinners and getting random phone calls just to talk about their days, the emptiness feels unbearable. Every knock on the door made my heart skip. Every unknown number made me hope. And every time it wasn't them, I told myself not to call. I told myself to wait, to see if they cared enough to reach out first. But waiting became its own kind of punishment. I finally gave in one afternoon and called Sarah. She answered, her voice clipped, like she didn't expect me. I said, "Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to check how everyone's doing." She paused for a moment and said, "We're fine, Mom. Busy, you know how it is." And just like that, I realized I wasn't really part of we anymore. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't ask if I needed anything, didn't even sound like she wanted to talk. After a few short minutes, she said she had to go, that she'd call later, but she never did. I spent that night sitting in my living room, staring at a family photo on the mantel. We'd taken it 5 years ago at Christmas, before things began to change, before I became someone they had to cut off. I studied each face in that photo, the smiles, the closeness, the warmth. I tried to understand how love that deep could just fade. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about favors. It was about connection, about belonging, and they took that away from me like it meant nothing. One day, I decided to visit the park where we used to take the kids when they were little. It was quiet that morning. The swings moved gently in the wind, and the benches were wet with dew. I sat down on one of them and thought about all those afternoons when I'd push the kids on the swings. Their laughter filling the air. That sound was like music back then. Now the silence was almost unbearable. A woman around my age sat beside me after a while. She smiled politely and we started talking. Her name was Diane. She told me her son lived far away and rarely visited. She said, "I guess they forget we're still here." And for a moment, I felt less alone. We sat there talking for hours, sharing our stories. Two strangers bound by the same quiet kind of heartbreak. After that day, we began meeting every week. Sometimes we'd bring coffee, sometimes just sit in silence. It helped somehow, knowing someone else understood that kind of pain. It reminded me that being forgotten didn't mean being worthless. But still, there were nights when I'd break down. Nights when I'd sit at the edge of my bed, holding my phone, scrolling through old messages from my family. Birthdays, holidays, even random "love you, Mom" texts. I'd reread them over and over, wondering what changed. One evening, around the time the sun was setting, there was a knock on my door. My heart leapt. Maybe, just maybe, one of them had come. But it was just the mailman, delivering a small envelope. No return address, just my name, written in my daughter's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a card that read, "We hope you understand this is for the best. Please don't be upset. No signature, no explanation. Just those words." I sat there holding that card, feeling something inside me crack wide open. They didn't just cut me off. They erased me. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared out the window, watching the streetlights flicker. My thoughts went everywhere. Memories, regrets, questions I'd never get answers to. I realized that I had spent so much of my life giving love, time, care. And now I had no one left to give it to. But the next morning, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was survival. Maybe it was both. I looked in the mirror and said out loud, "You still have a life. Don't let them take that too." I started volunteering at the local shelter. I began baking again, something I hadn't done since the kids grew up. I brought cookies for the staff and residents, and slowly, I found a small kind of joy again. People would smile when they saw me. Some even called me Miss Mary. That name started to mean something again. It wasn't the same love I lost, but it was love nonetheless, a different kind, a healing kind. One day, while leaving the shelter, I saw a young woman sitting outside crying. She told me she'd been kicked out by her parents after losing her job. Something about her story broke my heart. I invited her to have dinner with me that night. We sat in my little kitchen, eating spaghetti and talking. She said, "You remind me of my grandma." I smiled and said, "You remind me of the daughter I used to know." That night, when she left, she hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I mattered again. Still, every year when my birthday comes around, I sit by the phone. I tell myself I don't expect a call, but a small part of me always hopes. Hope is stubborn like that. The years have a strange way of softening some pains and deepening others. Time moves on, people grow older, memories fade. But some wounds never really close. Mine was one of them. Every time I walked past a family laughing together at a restaurant, or saw a mother holding her grown daughter's hand in the park, I felt that same quiet ache in my chest, the one that whispered, "That used to be you." But life, even in its cruelest moments, finds a way to move forward. I didn't know it then. But the pain of being left behind slowly began to turn into something else. A kind of acceptance, a peace that came from realizing that maybe the love I gave wasn't wasted. Maybe it just found its way somewhere else. Months turned into years. Diane and I became inseparable. Two old souls who met by accident, but healed each other's broken hearts. We started hosting Sunday dinners for the people at the shelter and the few neighbors who lived alone. We'd cook too much food, talk too loud, laugh too hard. It wasn't the family I once had, but it became the one I needed. One Sunday, as I was setting the table, the doorbell rang. I thought it was one of the neighbors, but when I opened the door, I froze. It was Sarah. She looked older, tired, maybe even regretful. She held a small bouquet of flowers in her hand and said softly, "Hi, Mom." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened, my eyes burned. I wanted to be angry, to ask her why now, after all this time. But instead, I just said, "Come in." She looked around my small home, her eyes landing on the laughter and warmth spilling from the kitchen. She smiled faintly and said, "You've been busy." I nodded. I had to be. We sat at the table, just the two of us, while the sounds of dinner carried from the kitchen. She told me that things hadn't been the same since we stopped talking, that Ethan felt guilty but didn't know how to fix things, that she missed me. I listened quietly, every word reopening a door I thought I'd sealed shut. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out something small, a folded envelope. "This is for you," she said. "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I wanted you to know that we're sorry." Inside was a letter, handwritten, shaky, full of crossed-out words. But the message was clear. They regretted everything. The dinner, the decision, the silence. They didn't realize how much it would hurt me. I sat there holding that letter, my hands trembling, tears streaming down my face. All the things I'd wanted to hear for years were finally in front of me. And yet, part of me didn't know what to do with them. Sarah reached across the table and held my hand. "Mom," she whispered, "can we start again?" I looked into her eyes, those same eyes that used to look up at me when she was little, full of trust and love. And I nodded. "We can try," I said. That night when she left, she hugged me longer than she ever had before. For the first time in years, I felt the kind of warmth that had been missing from my life. Not perfect, not complete, but real. After she left, I stood by the window, watching her car disappear down the road. The house felt quiet again, but not empty. Something had changed. Maybe forgiveness doesn't erase the past. Maybe it just gives it somewhere to rest. A few days later, she called and asked if she could come over for dinner again. I said yes, of course. And that Sunday, when she arrived with Ethan and the kids, my heart almost burst. My grandchildren ran into my arms shouting, "Grandma!" over and over again, their little hands clutching at me like they never wanted to let go. It wasn't a perfect reunion. There were still cracks, still things left unsaid. But love, the kind that survives disappointment and distance, has a way of filling those cracks with something unbreakable. Later that evening, after everyone left, I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and laughter that still echoed in the air. I looked up and whispered a quiet, "Thank you," to whoever or whatever had guided me through those dark years. Because I realized something important that night. Being cut off didn't end me. It changed me. It taught me strength I didn't know I had. And it showed me that love, even when buried deep under pain, can still find its way back home. And now, to those listening to my story, if you've ever been left behind, forgotten, or made to feel like you don't matter anymore, please hear me. You do matter. You still have purpose, even when others can't see it. You still deserve love, even if it doesn't come from where you expect it. People may walk away. They may take pieces of you when they go. But you are still whole. You are still enough. If my story touched you, even a little, please like this video. Not for me, but for everyone who's ever sat in silence wondering why love left them behind. Share it so maybe someone out there who's hurting will hear it too. And subscribe if you want to hear more stories that remind us that even in the deepest heartbreak, hope can still bloom. Because love doesn't always come back the same way it left. But when it does, it's even stronger.